Welcome everyone to another episode of the Imperial Scholars Podcast. My name is Mitch, my co-host is Cabs, and in today's episode we finally get to move on from the events and characters of the Sundering, and we get to move on from the degeneracy of the elves to something that I am much more fond of speaking of. We speak about none other than the Dawi of the Karaz Ankor, the Dwarfs. Cabs.
Let's go.
Let's
go, Dwarves.
It's time to diggy that hole.
Oh, dude, I'm so excited for the Dwarves.
Man,
let's do it.
I only hope you're half as excited, to be honest, as I am for this.
Dude, you know I'm a big dwarf guy. You know I like my dwarves.
They're
one of my favorite races.
They're fun.
Who doesn't like dwarves?
Yeah, how can you not? Like, genuinely. Well, okay, here's the thing, too, is that it's like everything you might think about a dwarf is like the Warhammer versus is amped up on steroids.
Even better.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to hear about these guys.
All right.
These bearded bastards.
All right, so we all know about the... Let's go back to the beginning of the dawn of time. We all know about the old ones coming down and creating the races, and that is when they had the dwarves emerge. And when the dwarves emerged... they weren't really... They were more or less the same as humans. They were having the same difficulties. They were having the same problems of just getting along with the nightmares of Warhammer. And somewhere down the line, they became very industrialist, and they took up hold in the mountains and made these enormous fortresses, which they refer to as the Karaz. Imagine literally just turning a mountain into a castle. That's a Karaz.
All right.
And... So when the dwarves first started off, there was I don't know how much of this is kind of dwarven folklore and how much of it is actual fact basis. But the dwarves have three ancestor gods, or they have a pantheon of ancestor gods, but there's three main ones, right? There is Grugni, Grimnir, and Valea. Grugni and Grimnir were brothers, and this is a bit weird. Valea was both of their wives? I'm not sure about how that works, but... Anyways, like, one thing you'll note about the dwarfs is, like... Do you know anything about, like, Norse myths?
What do you mean by, like, Norse myths?
Well, just, like, sort of like the dwarfs of, like, northern mythology and, like, you know, like... Thor and Odin and all that, and like there's like dwarfs in the sagas of like those characters, right?
Yeah, I know like a little bit, but I'm not like completely familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah, like I'm not. Yeah, you don't need to have a huge amount of familiarity, but like it's similar to that with the dwarfs. They kind of operate in a similar manner to like the ancestor gods operate in a similar manner based on the lore they have. So it's believed amongst all of the dwarfs now that, like, basically all the dwarfs were born and raised from the lineage of those three ancestor gods. Again, I don't know how much of that is, like, folklore and how much of that is actually truth, but regardless, like, these gods did exist at one point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just don't know about the whole lineage thing, but this is what the dwarves believe. And so years and years later, the dwarves have established themselves into the mountains and have industrialized, and they've become what you would expect of dwarves. They're a bunch of stubborn little balls of muscle and fury and big tufts of beard. And as you might expect, the beard of a dwarf is meant to represent basically his rank amongst the pack, to put it crudely. Like, if you have a giant... just, you know, monstrous beard hanging from, you know, from your chin to your toes, you are well regarded by everyone, and everyone knows your worth as a dwarf, right? And oftentimes these dudes are referred to as graybeards.
Ooh.
Yeah.
My boys.
The graybeards, the big, and the graybeards are great because they're exactly what you'd expect. They spend most of their time grumbling and scruffling with each other and just bickering. But they're still regarded with like, yes, wise one, and then the wise one is like, snarf.
They're just grumpy old dwarf men, is what you're getting at.
Pretty much, and
I
it's
love it.
oh, dude, I love it. The fact here just being like, ah, yes, you have wisdom beyond our years, and you're like, leave me alone. I don't like dealing with people.
Oh, wise one.
And if you are a younger dwarf, you may be referred to with sort of a derogative, like playful derogative term as a beardling. Because your beard's just starting to grow in. You're just getting that peach fuzz coming in.
Okay. So that's if you're a young boy.
Yeah, if you're a young dude up and coming with your beard and your stubble growing in off your cheeks, and you're still like regarded like as a dwarf, but you know you lack the wisdom that we have. So, yeah, that's kind of so you can pretty much go from there, assuming that like dwarves respect like age and wisdom and history and all this kind of stuff that's like I said, it's very Norse-esque. Like the reason I say that it has a very Norse-esque feeling about it is that, you know, there's always the thing that you kind of think of for Vikings of like they respect the stories of old, they respect justice of a certain kind, and they respect good ale. And so another aspect of the dwarfs, regardless, is their, you know, ale brewing. And one thing that's great is that, like, if you give a dwarf, like, a bad round of ale, they're going to take that as a personal insult to their character.
I love it.
So, there's so much for me to cover with the dwarfs, but, so I've established that, like, the dwarfs have put themselves up into Karaz, right?
Yeah, those like mountain home castle things.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like quite a few Karaz, which is like basically like every different kingdom, right? And each one is ruled by a king. But they are all more or less. It's kind of like lesser kings, right? Like they govern their own lands. But there is one mountain which stands up against all other, known as Karaz Ankor. And
That sounds pretty intense.
the Dwarven translation is the Ever Peaks. And this is the home of the High King of the Dwarfs, where like the head honcho, right? Like Emperor of all Dawi. Which is like, Dawi is the phrase used to like the dwarves refer to themselves as the Dawi. The Dawi of the Karaz Ankor, like the realm of the dwarfs.
The realm of the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. So, maybe you were just going to answer this, or maybe you did, and I'm just not paying that well of attention. But
I'm very scatterbrained right now, to be honest. It's too much, but go ahead.
Yeah, there's just so much. But no, what I want to ask was, is there different? So I understand that there's like lesser kings in quotation. So that's kind of like counties, right? You know, they have like counts, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And then there's like this emperor who like rules over all the counts and like stuff like that. So like traditional noble stuff, right? Okay. But what I want to ask, is there different dwarven kingdoms per se, or is there one dwarven kingdom? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
So ultimately,
Like, is there only like,
yeah, the Karaz Ankor was like the dwarven kingdoms, like the dwarven realms, right? They will always be proud people of the Dawi and the Karaz Ankor. But the kings, regardless, at the end of the day, they're still dwarfs, so they're still kind of greedy little bastards. So
yeah, that's how I was wondering, right? Like, I was wondering how that works. Is this you make it sound like, you know, like there's like Julius Caesar of the Roman Empire, but then he has his like little nobles or whatever that rule different areas. You know what I mean?
Pretty much. That's a great way of describing it, actually. It's Caesar, and then there's everyone else who rules around because of the obvious fact that these places still need rulers around them.
Yeah. Okay. So it is like that then. It works like that.
More or less, but the High King still will hold his folk, like his kings, in like, this is your realm to rule, and I expect you to keep it as such. There's a great scene in one of the books where the High King comes and says, like, there's grubby, or like, irks within your realm, King Belagar. And he basically says, like, this is a disdain upon your honor and your lineage. In other words, like, this is somehow like a personal insult to all of us that you've allowed this to happen.
Okay.
So, yeah, it operates in an interesting way. So it is like this aspect that the dwarfs all respect the High King. And basically, so long as the High King, has the authority, has the Dawiness to be a dwarf of such high caliber, he will remain in power and he will remain well respected by all others. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that other kings necessarily won't bicker in the backseat, though.
So how does one become the emperor? Do like other kings get elevated to that, or will they always stay as like a king of their mountain?
So generally, it's a bloodline situation. However, if the bloodline is completely, like, if he doesn't provide an heir, or if the heir is killed, because this is Warhammer, they will have to elect a new ruler themselves.
I see.
Mm-hmm. But it's still a, long and sort of, stressful process, because at the end of the day, you're voting in Caesar.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm trying to say. So like, okay, no, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to try to dig a little bit more into dwarven society, I guess, right? Because we haven't actually really gotten into that. So dwarfs operate.
Tell me about this.
The thing is that, like, dwarfs operate basically like when you are born and establishing yourself as a dwarf, you basically just find which guild that you want to become a part of.
All right.
So there are the guilds of, like, the brewers. There's the guild of the miners, and there's the guild of the engineers, I believe it is. So, and other such guilds as well. Like for female dwarfs, that is a thing, and female dwarfs will they exist, and they will become like, one option for them is to become basically priestesses of Valea, which is basically nuns, like they're first aid nuns.
And who's Balea?
Valea is the ancestor god, which was like the wife to Grimnir and Grugni.
And who are those two people?
So Grimnir is the dwarven god of war, effectively. Remember that dude who jumped in the portal when we were talking about?
Yes.
Yes, that's Grimnir.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, really.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay. I remember this though.
So Kalidor,
badass.
Kalidor Dragon Tamer actually met Grimnir at some point. It sounds like it's just like, okay, he was unaware. But, and then his brother, Grugni, is, like, god of, like, engineer and, like, craftsman, right? So very yin and yang. And Valea is very much, like, a hero sort of character, right? Like, she represents fertility and growth and prospering and all this stuff, right?
Okay.
So those are the three main pantheons that the dwarves revolve around, and their, like, jobs are basically, like, their guilds are built around these characters. There's no real guild for Grimnir, though. A lot of dwarfs basically, like, when they go to war, every dwarf was, like, born a warrior. Like, they have the hardiness, they have the determination, and they're just very, very durable.
So there's no, like, guild of warriors or anything, or like this is the hammer dwarves or axe dwarves or anything.
I hope you're ready for a good segue. So, the
segue, dude, I'm just taking you off topic everywhere.
Oh, dude, there's too much to cover, anyways. No, this is relevant, actually. This is a great segue because the warrior dwarfs, like, for all those. So one aspect I haven't exactly spoken a ton about is that honor is a major key factor amongst dwarfs.
Yeah, I was open to him.
But, like, on steroids, right? So if you are horribly dishonored and basically, like, if you fail to defend your family and they're killed, like while you're away or something, or you flee the battle or something, like if fear somehow manages to creep in and you return home, a lot of dwarfs often will do a trek to one of the holds, like one of the karaks, which is referred to as Karak Kajrin, and this is known as the Slayer's Keep. So
That doesn't sound good.
well, it's a religious place for the dwarfs, actually, because what they do is when Grimnir jumped into the portal, he shaved his head into a mohawk and dyed it with pig fat and made it like bright, fiery orange. So dwarfs who have dishonored themselves will go to this place, take what is referred to as the Slayer's Oath, and they will get all of these crazy tattoos on their bodies, basically just very Viking looking, very tribalistic looking, and then they will shave their head and look like, do the mohawk similar to Grimnir. But
Dude,
what
I gotta search this up.
look up Slayers, just look up Warhammer Slayers, and you'll find these guys.
This is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Dude, it is one of my favorite things.
Did you get these as models too?
Oh yeah, there's still a thing.
Oh, please tell me they're like a thing even in like Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, they did that with Age of Sigmar, and then they gave them like fire drakes, which is a bit weird given what they're supposed to be, but yeah, they have like a fire motif thing going on about them.
Okay, but that's why we like fantasy better, right?
Exactly.
Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's
Am I
gonna
allowed
be
to say
offended.
that?
No one will be offended
Okay.
saying that. Yeah. The old world will outlast Age of Sigmar, hopefully, well, not hopefully, but probably for quite a while. Until they can figure out what the hell they're doing with that. But anyways, so the Slayers will go there and they will take an oath, basically, that, like, we can... They basically are going to go and seek a worthy death. So at that point, they basically just trek out. They have no armor on, and they go to find a worthy foe who can give them an honorable death to for penance of their cowardice or of their failure and their, losing their honor.
Dude, I love this. I think this is like maybe my favorite thing that you have told me so far. This is awesome.
I love Slayers, but the thing is, too, is that it's a weird place to be in Dwarven society. Because if you're, like, a well-established Slayer, you're like, oh my god, what has he killed? How many battles has he won? But at the same time, you're not very good as a Slayer.
Yeah, because you're not dying.
Because you're not dead yet. Yeah, so a lot of Slayers, actually, like, if they don't die, they start getting really scared that they're going to die of old age.
Oh, I see.
So
Shit, hilarious.
So there's one Slayer, like probably the most famous one ever, named Gotrek, right? And Gotrek has had like a bazillion books written about him. Like there's no way I can cover Gotrek in one episode with everything he's done.
I'm excited for that episode.
The whole point of this character is that he cannot die. He's a Slayer who has gone literally through hell and back. So during the end times, he gets swallowed up by the Realm of Chaos, hoping like this is where it ends. This is where I will find, like, fighting all the demons of the warp, and it spits him back out during the Age of Sigmar. And now
so he's like still alive.
He's still alive, and now he's like, what the hell's going on? Like, why are there, like, demigods wandering around and everything? What happened to the old world?
Oh my gosh, I love this. This is amazing.
I was very excited to tell you about this. This is makes my heart and belly warm, like a good dwarven ale. So,
oh man,
that is like the warrior sect of like the dwarfs. There's also like hammerers who are like royal guards of the dwarven ambassadors, like they're elite warriors. But by and large, a lot of them will just end up taking up sword and shield and then just like, we're just going to war. We don't know how to go about this, but it's just in our blood.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're pretty hardy warriors just because, like, to fight for clan and kin, like, that's enough for them to just like turn into just the most violent, stumpy monsters that you've ever faced.
Oh god. All right, so what else do we have? So we got the Slayers, we got Hammer Dwarves.
We
Who else?
do. We have one group of like sort of. They're basically elite exterminators. These dudes are referred to
What?
as Iron Breakers.
Oh, that sounds intimidating. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, the reason that these guys are they're mean, and the reason being is that like their whole job is to basically go into mines and then just like if there's something down there like Skaven or goblins or whatever, they go down there with basically C4 packages and then just exterminate everything in sight.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. They're good at what they do, and what they do is just wipe you off the map.
Yeah.
So that is effectively, and obviously you can imagine like dwarfs are. So one thing with dwarfs in Warhammer that's not as consistent with other fantasy, I like to think,
Yeah.
their technology is far beyond like anything else.
Like
Like nothing comes
like in
close.
a really like in a really good way.
Yes, absolutely. Mostly
Oh,
because
okay, yeah. I'll hear
yeah,
about this. Tell,
they
tell me.
they have mastered like the controlling of well, like actually like I said C4, so they know how to use like explosives and stuff. But also like they know how to use steam. Like everything is very steampunky. So they not only have just like ballistas and stuff, they have catapults. They're operating with like grape shotguns. They're operating with cannons. They're operating with flame cannons, which is basically just firing napalm at you. Uh, and I think at some point they basically have like, is it white phosphorus? That stuff that like eats away at you.
They have white phosphorus gas, so they just missed the Geneva Convention pretty much.
Pretty much, and they will just, yeah, just throw a bomb of
So
that stuff at you, and it will eat at you.
you're telling me that they gas people?
Yeah.
There's no way.
Well, it's not. Is it? What's that stuff they use on? What is it? Tom Clancy's? Like, yeah. I mean, they'll use gases too, but yeah, this stuff it just eats away at you too. It's like acidic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's phosphorus, dude.
Yeah. Okay, it is phosphorus. I'm thinking of. Yeah, it's violent stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and like they've gotten to the point that they have actually created like helicopters.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they have steam-powered helicopters. These have models, too.
Oh, okay. What are these called? I gotta search these up.
Gyrocopters.
Gyrocopters. Oh man. Gyrocopters.
I'll let you find these guys.
Yeah, I gotta see what this looks like.
I mean,
Oh my gosh, these are so derpy, dude.
it's exactly what you expect. It's a one-man helicopter.
Yeah, with the little cannon on it.
Yeah.
Oh, this
some of
model's
them-
got like grenades and stuff.
Oh yeah, they'll carpet bomb you in these things. I like,
He's just so derpy looking too, dude.
dude.
That's what makes it even better.
It's hilarious. It's so funny playing these guys in the Total War because like you'll pull them out and then like if you like accidentally like get hit by like one barrage of like arrows, that thing goes down like immediately.
I was gonna ask, like, okay, in the lore, like, how like, since they're obviously technological advanced more than the other races, does that
Yeah.
give them like a advantage in combat, or did they kind of like even it out?
It's kind of this thing of, well, they have all of these, but they don't have any big monsters. That's never going to be their thing. They actually hate most races that have, like, any, like, beast taming. So one thing they hate about elves from, like, day one is just being like, why the hell are you flying dragons? We kill dragons. It's what we do.
Oh, I see. So, like, that's kind of like their counter is these big these big beasts.
Yes, that's their compensation for everyone else having dragons and, like, every other monstrosity, right? Or giants or whatever.
So why don't dwarves tame anything?
It's just not really part of the culture for them. They just don't have an interest. One thing that's important is that they're very conservative. And that is, in a way, very detrimental to dwarven advancement, actually. Because basically, it's like that old, like I said, they're old, angry boys, right? So imagine, like, you're a young engineer who's like, I have a new idea of how we can create, like, an enhancement to the gyrocopter. And some graybeard comes over and is like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Oh, is that actually how it works?
Yeah, a lot of the times it's because the graybeards are so just like, oh, these young and up-and-comers, always trying to make a name for themselves. Get out of here, you wazak. We don't have time for this.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah,
So let's like, I'm assuming all this is like a complete new invention or something. Then they're just like, nope.
No, like, that will stand in the way oftentimes. Like, unless it proves, like, basically, like, an engineer oftentimes, like, will go and beg, being like, just let me try this. Let me give this a shot, please, just to prove myself to the elders. And it's like, you got one chance, or kind of begrudgingly, right?
Okay. I was wondering this. They must have, like, eventually progressed in technology.
They do, yes. But, sometimes it's that thing of when Grandpa thinks he knows everything, and it's like,
like you gotta beg Grandpa like really badly to like take you to the mall or something,
Well, it's
and
like
he just finally agrees.
I mean, think about like a grandparent in real life and trying to explain to them a computer, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Or the internet, right? Like, this is basically the same thing. You're like, what do you mean it operates analog? So, so that stands as a major thing against dwarven advancements. And I'm not sure, like, what have I not covered yet in regards to the dwarves? We've gone over sort of their culture. We've gone over their... I guess the next thing, I don't have a good transition for this, but one thing I've, like, kind of, like, talked about is, dwarven honor and, like, condemnation. So one thing that's important to note is that dwarves in Warhammer are very spiteful.
What do you mean by spiteful?
So if you do a wronging to the dwarf will actually make a grudge of it. And he will actually record it, and he will expect, like, compensation for the wrong done against him. And that goes for other dwarves, too.
Okay.
So sometimes these grudges are fairly harmless, right? It could be something very stupid and very goofy, right? Oh, you put one too many, it's that SpongeBob joke. You forgot the pickles. That's going in the grudging. And they will actually... So the High King himself actually records all the grudges given against the dwarves. And this is recorded from all of the other kingdoms. And then eventually, I think it's something like every 5 years or something, they gather at Karaz Ankor to the High King and will tell him all of the wrongs done by whoever such and such. So there's an entire giant tome of just basically just wrongs done, from the most minute discretion to an entire settlement being razed to the ground. And this great book of grudges, as it's referred to, or the Damaz Kron, is it's all recorded in the High King's blood.
What?
So bro is straight up just bloodletting and then using his own blood and a quill to record the wrongs in the Book of Grudges.
How big is this book?
Oh, I mean, I was going to say Bible size, but honestly, I think this thing, like, dwarfs a Bible. It is, it's basically as thick as a dwarf.
This is so stupid.
And they'll hang on to these grudges until they're done. Like, until they're... And it could be, like, for generations.
This is so stupid, but I love it.
It's so dwarf, and it's just so great. So like sometimes like it can transfer on to other races too, right? Like that's the thing. So oftentimes like I mean like the orcs have entire chapters devoted to the Book of Grudges, right?
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's like, they don't expect any kind of repayment for it. So the actual repayment will just be like, yes, like basically just this big general is killed and then the Book of Grudge, this chapter of the Book of Grudges will be settled.
You know, I have to ask, which race has the most grudges, like,
Um,
towards them?
I think it might be the orcs, possibly the Skaven.
Oh, okay, so they even like grudge like what we would think would be the bad races, then pretty much. Like evil
And
races.
more or less, but like elves are in there, don't you worry. I'm sure humans are in there as well, but it's a thing of like orcs and orcs and Skaven are just like they're just needed to be exterminated. But even though they see them as less than human or like lesser beings, they still record every wronging. So imagine with like every death that happens in a battle and the High King is recording it and being like, yes, 300 dwarfs lost in this battle. The repayment will be 1,500 Skaven tails.
Oh, that's lovely, actually. I love that so much.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's so goofy. And obviously a lot of these like this thing is ever going. This thing is ever building. It will never be wiped clean.
Where do they keep this book? Please tell me it's like in some great hall of grudge.
So the High King himself the High King, it is decreed that the High King will only be seated ever on what is referred to as the Throne of Power. And the Throne of
Okay.
Power is this giant golden, like dragon boat looking chair that is constantly being carried by four throne bearer dwarfs, which is basically the most elite champions of the dwarfs have the privilege of carrying the High King, like an Aztec ruler. And the Great Book of Grudges is ever just like displayed in front of the High King on his chair for him to gloss over and cross out. It is so much. And yeah, this chair has a lot of this chair actually has some cool powers too. Like it actually has some runes that are like engraved in it that gives it some magical powers.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, it has some major defensive protective abilities. So like in books like you'll read it being like, "Oh yeah, like a catapult will launch off." And then like basically like a bubble shield will just like appear and like the thing will shatter against an invisible shield. Stuff like
This
that.
thing's got the Halo bubble shield around it.
Pretty much. It's actually got some magical enchantments in it. And this is a good. Do you have any other questions regarding the grudging?
No, I think the grudging speaks for itself.
It's pretty straightforward, yeah. And hence why a lot of guys will do the Slayer's Oath.
Oh my god.
But I said that it has runes engraved in it, so I should speak about runesmithing.
Yeah, I was
So,
just gonna ask, what are the dwarven's magic in Warhammer?
so dwarfs aren't in. Some dwarfs do have some magical prowess. They do have some connection to the winds of magic, but they aren't able to manifest it quite like pretty much every other race. So what they do instead is they actually transfer their magical abilities into runes that are engraved on stones and weapons. Except for a few. So those who have this kind of power, like if you are an adept learning this stuff, you are referred to as a runesmith, right? Like you're
Mhm.
learning the ways of creating these things. If you're a master, like if you're a graybeard, you're referred to as a rune lord. And rune lords have a lot of sway regarding like politics. They are in regard to, like if a Rune Lord is seeking an audience with a king, he will not be kept. He is kept in like that high esteem that it's like you're almost on like the same league as like being amongst the kings. And the reason being is that it's believed that they have the closest connection to Grugni.
Oh, okay.
So it's part of their like lineage, right? Part of their bloodline. And these dudes are hilarious because when they're not just putting their magic into weapons and, you know, rune axes and stuff like that, they are going to battle, and oftentimes they are 9 of these things that have been made by Grugni, or at least it is believed. And they will go atop what is referred to as an Anvil of Doom. And the Anvil of Doom is very similar to the Throne of Power, where there's 4 dudes carrying this guy with an anvil who's just smiting the anvil with a magic hammer and just like causing explosions on the battlefield.
All right.
Oh, so, and like that is the extent of magic that the dwarves have, basically.
I don't even know what to say.
Imagine you're just going, you're getting ready, it's like your first day on the job, you see this dwarf coming over the horizon with an anvil on a platform, 4 dudes carrying him, and he's just wailing on this thing and just causing decimation amongst the ranks.
Yeah, okay. Dwarves.
Dwarves, brother.
Everyone. Dwarves. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh, man.
So, I gotta be honest, I don't know if I have too much more to add around Dwarven society. Oh, I should add one thing, actually, is that random little tidbit here. Dwarven men are much more common than Dwarven women. And
why is that?
Part of this is, I'm not sure exactly why, like, them, like, birth rate wise, like, what it is, but part of it is because, marrying and breeding amongst dwarfs is quite difficult. Because they have a very weird tradition where if a dwarven man wishes to wed a dwarven woman, he must wrap his beard around her waist and basically be able to go a full 360 around her. And often the man must basically tell the father of the bride, I wish to marry your daughter, in which he must pay the father equal weight of his daughter in gold.
Oh.
And so oftentimes the parents will fatten up the bride so that they can get more gold out of the groom.
Oh my god. So is it like, I guess it's more worth having daughters then?
Yeah, because it's like you have a golden goose that you can sell off for basically a lifetime supply of gold. That's one thing too. Dwarfs love their gold and their jewels, right? As per just common amongst dwarfs. They love their mining and their industry.
Oh my god, this is ridiculous, but I love it.
Yeah. And that's one thing too, is that like dwarfs operate basically with like if you're expected to like you're expected to just do the work that you're expected to do, basically, right? I don't want any grumbling, I don't want any whining. So their efficiency made manifest. And tenacity made manifest.
Oh man.
Again, it's so much. This has as much as like the Alathanar episode of just like what is happening, but like in a way that, oh man, I love it. It's so good. The dwarves are the best. But yeah, it's kind of weird too, because they'll go from being fairly reasonable folk, but the second that you disrespect them enough, they can basically just decide, alright, I'm gonna wipe you off the map now. So, people who say like the dwarves are probably like the most hero race of fantasy, I don't know how rooted that can really. I don't know how accurate that can be. As much as I love reading about them, they can be pretty petty, and yeah, pretty. It's very weird reading about them. They seem very one-sided in their morals. Whereas, like, they see, like, them, like, basically swiping an enemy off the map, and they're like, haha, a great victory. And meanwhile, it's like, they'll get hit by, like, a rock barrage, and they're like, those vile fiends!
I love it. And write it in the Grudge book.
That's going in the book. That's going in the book.
Oh,
Someone
man.
quick, get me a quill and blood let me. We have grudges that need settling.
Oh my god, dude. I love it so much.
It's so much. It's so much. It's so good. Love dwarves. Love everything about them. Oh. Alright, I thought this would be a longer episode. I don't know if I have too much else to add, because there's a lot of stuff that will be added on. I wanted this to be a general episode of Elven society and how it functions. Right?
Yeah, like, like a,
It's an introduction, just
like
so that we,
yeah.
and then there's no confusion in the future.
I think it's good. I think it's good. Like it's a little teaser, man. A little teaser of what to come.
This is a teaser of what to come. I think everyone knows what's coming up next. I think that's about as subtle as a sledgehammer.
I don't know what's coming. What's coming up next? Actually, don't spoil it.
I was about to say. I was like, you really want this, sir? You really want to do this all
No,
live?
no, I don't.
No.
Leave
Leave those few who don't know waiting.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Fair enough. So yeah, I guess you have any questions? Have I left anything unanswered?
I guess my only question would be what is your favorite dwarf king? Just to end the episode on.
Oh God! Wow, there's actually a lot. My
Alright, top
personal. I think I know my favorite off the top of my head. I think I know the one. Even
Okay.
though it's kind of a ripoff of. Oh, actually, one thing I should add real quick. Not one thing if I can backtrack, and then I'll go and answer your question. One thing
Yeah.
I didn't note actually is that not every single dwarf actually is living in the mountains. Some of them are actually living in like the hills and the forests. And these
We got the
guys,
hill dwarves.
we got hill dwarves. They do exist.
Okay, see, this is important. This is important.
This is
All right,
important. I'm glad I didn't. Yeah. Yeah. I'm amazed I forgot about this. These dudes are referred to like more commonly as like rangers, but the proper dwarven name for them is the Skaranawi. I think is how it goes. So these dudes are they're the classic like they're your ranger dwarf dudes. So they're all about like. They reside in like strongholds and stuff, but like they're not in the big mountaintops. They're just in like sort of how do I describe it? They manage the roads oftentimes, right? Like it's not really their duty, but it's their duty as just the Skaranari and those who basically like walk amongst the plains. Like if they see conflict going on the roads, they'll just like kind of like hop up and then just like really quickly just blast you like with like 50 dudes with crossbows and then just eviscerate you. So it's kind of like the hills have eyes.
So are they like what's their technology like? And do they submit to the king?
They do have kings themselves. They do have a king themselves. But yeah,
Do they submit to the emperor? Do they submit to the emperor?
Everyone does at the end of the day. At the end of the day,
So even that.
Even them. But they are often like, if there's a council amongst the kings, they actually won't be there. So they are like the outcast dwarfs. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably, I don't know how much they're into like the whole rune smithing and all this stuff, because they seem like they're kind of like, well, I mean, they're like Aragorn, right? Like they're Strider. It's an entire faction of just outcasts, sort of.
Oh, I see. So they're just like outcast dwarves.
They're pretty much. Yeah. But in a way that's like they choose this life, right? This is how they wish to be. It's not like they were like cast out of the mountains or anything. They could come back if they wanted.
Okay.
Yeah. There is certain like aspects of cultures that we'll get into down the line, where it's like certain cultures of dwarves are like more regarded with like stereotypes and stuff, and just kind of like what they're proficient in. But your question to me of if there was any dwarven high king who was my favorite, even though this is sort of a ripoff of the Hobbit, my favorite dwarven high king has got to be Belagar Ironhammer, and part of that is because he is such a angry moron that I can't help but love him. Basically, his whole shtick is that he is constantly trying to fight to take his kingdom back from the Skaven and the Greenskins. And his kingdom actually, like, size-wise, it rivals Karaz Ankor. It's referred to as Karak Eight Peaks. But at the same... So it's always been, like, the competitive power to Karaz Ankor. But now with, like, time just passing on, the dwarves have been basically, like, forced into the upper parts of the mountain, and the Skaven and the Greenskins just totally occupy the subterraneans.
Hmm.
Oh,
So he's just trying to get back.
yeah, he's just trying to get back his land, but he's constantly just being bamboozled by the same Skaven or the same Greenskin over and over again and just frothing at the mouth. And oftentimes the High King will come in and save him and be like, all right, you've dishonored yourself again. And he just kind of grumbles to himself like, "Rrr." And this is basically his entire lineage, is just trying to take back his mountain hold. But he's great too, because he does have like a wife and everything. Like, he has a lot of character for a dwarf, which is not too common, actually. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Some of the main issue I find with the High King is that he doesn't have too much. He doesn't have like a family or anything, so he has no conflict there. Belagar has a family of like a wife and child, and he's constantly bickering with his wife. So,
I love it.
and I should just add in one key note here, actually. I didn't mention the fact that the dwarfs do have, like, the underway, right? So they have actually created an entire, basically, subway system for them to travel by. Because, again, they're just digging through the mountains, right? Like, they hollowed out a mountain. Let's just keep going.
That's pretty sick, actually.
Yeah, so just imagine giant tunnels, just kind of like Moria, right?
And do they have like mine carts going everywhere? Like, how do they travel through them?
I'm sure probably, like, some of them have minecarts and stuff going about them. I mean, with a, if you could create helicopters, I don't know why you couldn't create minecart systems. But
Yeah,
it's never
fair.
been, like, I've never actually, like, read about it, to be honest. And part of that's probably because there's none left. Hint, hint. Wink, wink. All right. Well, I don't have anything. Have I answered all your questions, sir?
I believe you have.
All right. I mean,
Name me your favorite king. Oh, I do have one more question, actually.
all right,
Before
all
we
right.
end off. Oh,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
keeping everyone on their toes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Who is the biggest enemy of the dwarves? You do not answer that. You do not say that.
Oh.
Who
Um,
are they fighting the most?
I would say the greenskins, like the orcs and the
Yeah?
goblins. Yeah. The Skaven are close second, but the Skaven are always sneakier, and they're kind of like just a pain in the ass enemy for the dwarves.
Yeah, but like their traditional enemy is the orcs and goblins.
I would say so, yes.
I see.
And don't worry, we'll cover them at some point too. We'll go over all the wackiness of those dudes. I know you're excited for that.
I'm excited for that, but you know I love my dwarves. One of my favorite games of all time is Dwarf Fortress.
I do know this for a fact. That is a fair assessment.
So I am a big fan of my dwarf boys, my bearded men.
Yeah, they're just eating their thick, hearty meats and drinking their beer and
Yeah,
just being
like
bitter.
well, yeah, just grumpy. Like they have a grudge book, man.
I'm gonna get a Grudge book.
Dude, I'm starting one for everyone who doesn't sub when they watch the video.
For every dislike, there's a Grudge coming your way.
Yeah, I'm gonna stand here brooding. All right,
let's just stare at my screen, just grumble.
I'm ready for the couple episodes of covering the dwarves that we'll be doing in the future.
Yeah, don't worry. They're coming up next. They'll be prominent.
Perfect.
All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode where we cover the dwarfs, the Dawi of the Karaz Ankor. We'll go into further detail of like certain aspects of them sometime in the near future. I'm looking forward to talking about them more. This is a series that I could definitely do like 4 episodes on. I don't need any more weird dwarf or elf shit. No more. I don't need any more wolves. I need them to eat the wolves. Alright? Please. Anyways, please do consider liking and subscribing, and feel free to leave a comment. Let me know if there is anything I missed so that we can cover it in the near future. And yeah, best wishes until then. Thanks all so much.
Peace out, everyone.